So I know a lot of y'all struggle with changing chords quickly, and so today I just want to give you some tips and some tricks on how to switch quickly enough to be able to play what you want in some different keys. So let's dive in. All right, so the first chord that most of us end up playing in, the first key we end up playing in is G, and a lot of us learn to make a G in this shape, but I would suggest that you start making a G like this using all four of your fingers, and I'm going to explain why in just a second. Now, in the key of G, we have chords of G, C, D, and then our relative minor is E minor. So those are the four chords we're trying to get to quickly if we're playing in G. And instead of taking your fingers completely off the fret, and this works for any chord, I want you to start thinking about leaving as many fingers down as you can. So the less fingers you have to move, the faster you'll be, the more efficient you'll be in playing guitar. So instead of taking all of my fingers off and going to the C chord, there is a different kind of C that we can make. So I'm playing G in this shape, and I'm just going to move these two fingers over one fret, and now I get what's called a C add 9. And yes, this is not, a regular C chord like we learn, but in most songs, this will be able to be substituted for that regular C. So if you're playing in the key of G, this generally, most of the time, will be able to be substituted as that C chord. And all you're doing is moving two fingers. So that's a really good practice to sit there and move those back and forth between G and this C add 9. Also, when you go to the D chord, if you think about making a D, I do not have to lift up this ring finger. This ring finger, as long as I'm making a G in this shape, stays exactly where it is, and I'm only moving these two fingers over, and I'm lifting this pinky up. And then to go back to a C or a G, I just put my pinky back down, and I'm only moving these two fingers. So that ring finger stays there the whole time that I'm playing in G. I never have to move it. Even when you go to, say, your E minor chord, I can still leave these here if I want. Now this makes like an E minor 7th, but you can still play this way. If you want to lift these two up, that's fine. But this is an option to be able to play E minor this way while still leaving these two fingers there. And a good song to practice this switching on would be something like Sweet Home Alabama, where we get D for 2 strums, this C add 9 for 2 strums, and then G for 4 strums. So and that is the whole song. It just repeats over and over, but that's a really good song to practice sort of switching and getting fast inside of the key of G. Now another key that a lot of people struggle with is the key of C. So if you're playing C, in the key of C, you would play C this way, and your chords would be C, F, G, and A minor. Now let's just talk about A minor for a second. Instead of taking our fingers off and finding an A minor, if you're playing in the going from a C to an A minor, the only finger I have to move is this ring finger here, and I'm just going to tuck it behind my middle finger. So to go from C to A minor or from A minor to C, I'm only moving one finger, so I don't have to take the other ones off. And then if I'm going to my F chord, if you think about it, you're just going to lay this finger flat where it is because you need to hold these two down. You were already holding one of them down. Now you need to hold the other one down. And then I'm just going to move these two fingers over one. To go back to the C, I just sort of lift up and move these two fingers over. So you can think about it more like rolling. You're sort of rolling your hand over to this F. And the F can be difficult to make, but once you master the F chord, you'll find that it's actually, movable around the guitar, and it's a really useful chord. Now, if you're in C, your other chord that we haven't talked about is G. And yes, if you're going to make that regular G, you would have to take all your fingers off and move to this G. But I have seen several people, now I never really could do this very well because it's just not something I practiced, but if you struggle going from C to G, you can, your pinky's already sitting right here, you can put this down on the 3rd fret of the E string and then just move these 2 fingers over to make a G chord. So that is an option if you're in the key of C to make a G chord this way, and then you're not having to move quite as much. Now, I find it just as easy, to sort of take my fingers off and play a G, but if you struggle going from C to G, that is an option that you have. So let's talk about the key of E, which you play in a lot if you're playing things like blues and rock. And the chords to E are E, A, and B 7th. And you have a C sharp minor, but if you're struggling switching chords at the moment, let's just stick with the E, A, and the B. So I used to be a real stickler, I know that's a strange word, but I used to be one who was very adamant that you needed to make an A in this shape. But the older I've gotten, the lazier I've gotten, I don't like making an A like this. Now, it's good to practice because you can make an A 7th, and there's some variations of an A you can do if you're using all 3 of your fingers, but it's not necessary in order to play an A chord. So let's say I wanted to play an A, I can just lay my finger flat. Now I'm going to try to avoid hitting, try to avoid, laying my finger on this E string. So I'm going to have to kind of, lay it in a funky way if I want to get that open E to ring out. Otherwise, you can just kind of deaden that E string. But you can just lay your finger flat there and play an A chord. And I do this all the time just because I'm old and I'm lazy and I don't want to make a real A. I just want to lay my finger flat. So that's an easy way to go, say, from E to A, and you don't have to do it with, your pointer finger. You can do it with your middle finger since it's already right there. Do it however is comfortable for you. Don't let anybody tell you have to do it a certain way. Do it the way you want to do it and what's easiest for you. So if it's easier for you to, say, do it with your ring finger or your middle finger, or for me, I like to come up here and do it with my pointer finger. But either way, that's an easy way to make that A chord. When you play a B, most people play a B 7th. So the way you would play a B 7th, remember, we don't want to lift up a whole lot of fingers. I'm going to put my pinky here on the 2nd fret of the E string. I'm going to move this finger over 1 fret, so I'm going to move it to the D string, but I'm going to leave it right here on the 1st fret. My middle finger's not going to go anywhere, and then I'm going to take this finger and move it down 1 string. So we were here. This finger stays the same. This one goes this way, and this one goes this way. So don't worry about taking your finger off and trying to lay, all that down. That's really time consuming. Leave this finger where it is and just kind of move these other fingers in opposite direction. Now, I will give you a little piece of advice. If you cannot switch chords quickly enough to, say, keep up with the song, like it takes you a minute to make that transition, don't stop strumming. It sounds much worse to stop until you get set. It is okay to kind of strum them open until you can get back set. So don't worry about switching quickly as much as keeping this going, because you don't want the rhythm to stop. If the rhythm stops, then it begins to sound really amateurish. But even if, it takes a second to get to the next chord, don't worry about it. Just keep strumming. And eventually you'll get fast enough and all of these things will begin to click. So I hope this helps. And if there's chords that you struggle with, that you need help with, just reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you.